When Barack Obama first won the presidential election 7.5, almost 8 years ago, I watched with my then 7-year-old son, anxious, excited, scared, elated, and in tears. Too many memories running round in my head as I cried and prayed and moaned. I thought the world was trying to atone, remembering back, marking our beginnings. That was a night that Black men and women had fought and died for, working and running towards freedom. A night when, from deep within, every Black soul felt like humming. Something cracked that night. Strata shook, and layer upon layer of injustice and hatred and racist imperfection was made right that night. It unpacked itself. Pried open, peeled back, and retracted that night. Pulled at the seams of the hypocrisy or failed democracy culturally woven into our cultural fabric and American dream. Someone slipped in through liberty's crack. And while bells were ringing, Americans were singing. Black, white, brown, holding hands. And our plight, for a brief moment, felt like it was made right that night. Tucking in precious brown boy, I found myself praying and weeping and repeating over and over again and again, thank you, Lord. Lord, I thank you for all the mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers taken, stolen, kidnapped and captured, leaving African shores never to see freedom no more. Instead, sickened and stiffened, stifled in gory island gore, bound for the West Indies and New World shores, selling humans to new men, themselves shaking off the grip of colonial oppression, aggression, greed looming, making pacts with slave ship crewmen to beg, barter, or steal bondage for cheap. And as we wept, packed spoon fashion in a sickly squeeze, knees weak from few rations, days, weeks, months, sunk in the belly of the beast, held down, shackled, fastened, fits of fever, alternating and precipitating fashion between incontinence and bloated constipation, or simply mere starvation. Some met death on board ship. Others thinking in African tongues, I can't take another hit. And hurled iron shackles and self into the sea. But you best believe we are proof positive that the majority survived and stayed alive despite Middle Passage slaughter and hell in high water. For those, them, some, we are the ones who built this nation. Worked field and farm and plantation, forbidden to read and write or improve our station, but we seldom acknowledge the sacrifice of those who survived, for their lives denied. I thought back then, with Barack Obama's win, we could never be whitewashed in historical lies after the darkest human nightmare made real. For all those bones that were tossed or jumped free into the ocean's deep, left like breadcrumbs from here to there to here, marking the paths to the Middle Passage and sorrow's tears. For all the dislocated, dehumanized, disenfranchised, degraded. For the dismembered limbs, frayed and whipped or tied to trees that bore strange fruit, irrigated with blood and tears running to the root of a new kind of American terrorism. Tarred and feathered, worked and weathered, but stoic to the bone, a new kind of heroism, all their own. An appeal was made for David Walker. The wind blew breath back into Emmett Till. The symbolic noose broken Gabriel Prosser took himself off a tree and shook his spirit wealth, finally free. How many long to see the sight? And I wished Medgar and Malcolm and Martin could have witnessed that night. 8 years later, eyes now wide. We have to admit, Obama tried, while Congress seemingly denied him at every turn. Lesson learned. Tonight, I feel those bones of my brethren. I hear their screams, their whispers, their chants, their cries. Afraid for their fate couched in lies, afraid for their blue, black, brown lullabies, for their babies whose black lives matter, but can be shattered in an instant. America growing retro precarious. We and our babies left growing up in a world that would hate them and berate them, and despite 13th Amendment would still want to estimate them less than 3/5 of what a black man and woman could, would, should be. For Nat Turner Skin and Denmark Vesey, for Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth, bones that for years hadn't mattered, violently splattered, left scattered, shifted and moved, willed themselves whole, behooved to do so despite the sin, realizing that hearts and minds and worlds can never make a change if we don't realign again. For those dry bones, bones like Ezekiel, calling us out, calling us home, shaming us down to our very sinew, to stand up, speak up,